Clinton's breath caught as he saw the silhouette stepping in. But it wasn't Bianca. It was Mabel. She walked down the aisle slowly, wearing the abandoned wedding dress, ivory silk cascading around her. Her eyes never left Clinton's, filled with silent apology and panic. "What the hell is going on?" Clinton hissed under his breath as she reached him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton," she whispered. "Bianca never came. I couldn't let them laugh at you. I didn't know what else to do." The officiant cleared his throat, mistaking the tension for ceremony nerves. Clinton had no choice but to go along with it. His jaw was clenched so tightly Mabel thought he might break a tooth. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, and just like that, the ceremony began. He gripped Mabel's hand with a mix of rage and confusion, but his public image was more important. So he played the part, smiling for the guests, nodding to business partners, acting like this was all part of the plan. At the reception, Mabel sat alone, away from the spotlight. She sipped orange juice quietly while trying not to tremble. Clinton was surrounded by admirers, but his eyes flicked to her every few minutes, unreadable. Then, trouble walked over in stilettos. Well, isn't this a surprise?" said Melissa, the daughter of a major investor, with her partner in gossip, Ijeoma, in tow. "You didn't tell us Bianca had a makeover?" Ijeoma added with an arrogant smirk. "Or maybe she just became your assistant." They laughed cruelly. Mabel remained silent. These women had once volunteered to marry Clinton for alliance. Mabel had overheard it once, a casual boardroom joke. "I'm sure the guests don't know what Bianca really looks like," Melissa taunted. Mabel's mouth went dry. Before she could defend herself, Clinton walked over, arm in arm with one of his close friends visiting from Cape Town. "There she is," his friend exclaimed. "Clinton, you didn't say your bride was this stunning?" Mabel stood, trying to smile, taking the man's handshake. "She's perfect," he said with a hearty laugh, patting Clinton on the back. Clinton nodded slowly and took Mabel's hand. "Stay close. Don't let go," he murmured, lacing his fingers through hers. Mabel's heart pounded. She hadn't imagined this moment, not with him. They turned as a chorus of clinking glasses rang out. "Kiss the bride! Kiss the bride!" Mabel panicked. The crowd was close and a fake-out would be noticeable. Clinton leaned in, hands cupping her cheeks. "Mind if I kiss you?" he whispered, his lips almost touching hers. Before she could answer, he pressed into her softly, then deeper. Mabel's mind went blank. Her body responded instinctively, heart thundering. Mabel Iduson held the phone away from her ear, her heart pounding with anxiety, as the furious voice of her boss, Clinton Khalifa, boomed through the speaker. "Where is she? We're 30 minutes late already," he shouted, his baritone voice filled with rage. Mabel stood in the private dressing suite of the Grand Khalifa Estate Hall in Ikoyi, surrounded by untouched wedding bouquets and an abandoned ivory gown. She glanced around the room, still empty except for her reflection in the full-length mirror. "Sir, she'll be here soon," Mabel lied, swallowing hard. The call ended with a string of curses. She dropped the phone onto the velvet chair and ran her fingers through her hair in frustration. Clinton Khalifa was the most powerful corporate tycoon in Lagos, known for his ruthlessness, perfectionism, and the golden rule. If something goes wrong, fix it. And something had gone horribly wrong. Oh, his fiancée, Bianca Onwudawi, was nowhere to be found. Mabel paced the room. She had been Clinton's personal assistant for over 5 years, loyal to a fault and always prepared for chaos. But this was unprecedented. As the minutes ticked by, humiliation threatened to taint Clinton's name. Foreign investors, high-ranking politicians, and Lagos elite filled the event hall, waiting for a ceremony that had no bride. Mabel stared at the wedding dress left behind in haste. "Fix it!" she heard Clinton's voice echo in her head. A dangerous idea crept into her mind. Ridiculous, reckless, but maybe the only solution. She hesitated for a moment, and then made a choice. Meanwhile, downstairs in the crystal-lit ballroom, Clinton adjusted the cuff of his dark emerald tuxedo. Cameras flashed, guests whispered, and the string quartet played the entrance tune for the fourth time. He clenched his jaw, eyes fixed on the tall mahogany doors at the back of the room. Suddenly, the doors opened. The crowd turned. Clinton's breath caught as he saw the silhouette stepping in. But it wasn't Bianca. It was Mabel. She walked down the aisle slowly, wearing the abandoned wedding dress, ivory silk cascading around her. Her eyes never left Clinton's, filled with silent apology and panic. "What the hell is going on?" Clinton hissed under his breath as she reached him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton," she whispered. "Bianca never came. I couldn't let them laugh at you. I didn't know what else to do." The officiant cleared his throat, mistaking the tension for ceremony nerves. Clinton had no choice but to go along with it. His jaw was clenched so tightly Mabel thought he might break a tooth. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, and just like that, the ceremony began. He gripped Mabel's hand with a mix of rage and confusion, but his public image was more important. So he played the part, smiling for the guests, nodding to business partners, acting like this was all part of the plan. At the reception, Mabel sat alone, away from the spotlight. She sipped orange juice quietly while trying not to tremble. Clinton was surrounded by admirers, but his eyes flicked to her every few minutes, unreadable. Then, Trouble walked over in stilettos. Well, isn't this a surprise?" said Melissa, the daughter of a major investor, with her partner in gossip, Ioma, in tow. "You didn't tell us Bianca had a makeover?" Ioma added with an arrogant smirk. "Or maybe she just became your assistant." They laughed cruelly. Mabel remained silent. These women had once volunteered to marry Clinton for alliance. Mabel had overheard it once, a casual boardroom joke. "I'm sure the guests don't know what Bianca really looks like," Melissa taunted. Mabel's mouth went dry. Before she could defend herself, Clinton walked over, arm in arm with one of his close friends visiting from Cape Town. "There she is," his friend exclaimed. "Clinton, you didn't say your bride was this stunning?" Mabel stood, trying to smile, taking the man's handshake. "She's perfect," he said with a hearty laugh, patting Clinton on the back. Clinton nodded slowly and took Mabel's hand. "Stay close. Don't let go," he murmured, lacing his fingers through hers. Mabel's heart pounded. She hadn't imagined this moment, not with him. They turned as a chorus of clinking glasses rang out. "Kiss the bride! Kiss the bride!" Mabel panicked. The crowd was close and a fake-out would be noticeable. Clinton leaned in, hands cupping her cheeks. "Mind if I kiss you?" he whispered, his lips almost touching hers. Before she could answer, he pressed into her softly, then deeper. Mabel's mind went blank. Her body responded instinctively, heart thundering. When they finally broke apart, the room erupted in cheers and whistles. Later that evening, as the mansion grew quiet and the guests filtered out, Clinton's parents asked to speak with him and Mabel privately. They sat across from her, arms folded. Clinton entered last. "Perfect timing, son," his father said. "Care to explain why this is the first time we're hearing about this new development?" Mabel tensed. But Clinton only smiled. "This is my wife," he said smoothly. "Not Bianca. Mabel. She's the one I married today." Mabel blinked, stunned by his sudden charm. His mother sighed. "You could have warned us." "Sorry, Mum," Clinton replied, wrapping an arm around Mabel's shoulder. After the meeting, Mabel wandered the hallway of the mansion, her new home now, apparently. She stood in the master bedroom doorway, trying to catch her breath. Her boss? Now husband? She ducked into the bathroom, grabbing her phone and calling her best friend Ayo. "You did what?" Ayo shrieked with laughter on the other end. "I had to. Clinton was about to be humiliated." "Well, girl," Ayo teased, "you better play your part tonight." "What part?" Mabel whispered. "The honeymoon. It's your duty now." Mabel groaned. "I can't even kiss him without blushing." "Girl, just show him who's boss," Ayo said. Just then, Mabel stepped out of the bathroom. and nearly collided with Clinton himself. "I'll see you in the bedroom," he said coolly. "We need to talk." Mabel stood frozen. Her mind was a mess, her heart worse. As the door to the bedroom creaked open, she exhaled sharply and stepped inside. Mabel Iduson stood at the entrance of the bedroom, fingers fidgeting with the fabric of her silk dress. She had changed into something soft and elegant, a pale rose-colored slip that clung to her body in a way that made her feel both vulnerable and brave. Her curls were loose around her shoulders, her bare feet sinking into the plush Persian rug beneath her. Clinton Khalifa sat on the edge of the massive king-size bed, his suit jacket off, top button undone, sleeves rolled up. The soft lighting from the chandelier made the angles of his jaw even sharper, his mood unreadable. She took a hesitant step forward. He looked up slowly, his dark eyes meeting hers with cool calculation. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice low. Mabel froze. Her pulse spiked. I just thought, since this is our wedding night," she trailed off. Clinton's mouth twitched into something between a smirk and a frown. "Wait, were you expecting that?" Mabel's cheeks flushed. She looked down at her dress, suddenly self-conscious. "No, yes. I didn't know what to expect." He stood up in one smooth motion and walked toward her. She backed up slightly, heart thundering. He stopped inches away, the tension thick between them. "Were you hoping I'd kiss you again?" he murmured, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "Do you want this?" He moved his hand lightly down her arm. Mabel opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Or maybe this?" he added, leaning in to blow softly against her neck. The sensation made her shiver. Then suddenly, he pulled back, an amused glint in his eyes. "In your dreams," he said, his tone sharp. And with that, he walked over to the bed and flopped down like he hadn't just lit her nerves on fire. Mabel turned away quickly, cheeks burning. She had no idea what was worse, his mocking or the way her heart still fluttered despite it. "I'm not here to play pretend," Clinton said after a long pause. "We need to talk about you and Bianca." At the mention of his ex-fiancée, Mabel tensed. "She left me," Clinton continued, staring at the ceiling, "on our wedding day, for my friend. Did you know that?" Mabel shook her head, stepping further into the room. "No, I only knew she didn't show up." "She didn't even have the guts to call me," he said bitterly, "just vanished." There was a long silence. Mabel stood beside the window, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I know I shouldn't have worn that dress," she whispered, "but I didn't want you to go through that in front of everyone." He turned his head to look at her. For a moment, the ice in his eyes softened. "I didn't ask you to," he said, "but thank you." Mabel looked at him in surprise. She hadn't expected gratitude from him. Not after everything. He sighed. "We'll figure out what to do next. For now, sleep in the guest room. I need space." She nodded quietly and left the room. In the early hours of the morning, Clinton stared at the ceiling of his darkened room. His head ached, but not from alcohol. His heart did. He had truly loved Bianca. She was poised, elegant, everything his image required. Or so he thought. The betrayal had cut deep, and even now, a day after the wedding, he couldn't bring himself to delete her number. He tried calling her again. No answer. He then tried Dylan, his once trusted friend. Still nothing. Clinton sighed heavily and closed his eyes. But the only thing that came to mind was Mabel's face at the altar, her fear, her courage. By the third day of their bizarre marriage, Mabel was struggling to keep up. Clinton treated her coldly at home, yet brought her to and from the office like a proper wife. Inside the sprawling Khalifa mansion, she felt like a glorified housekeeper. Well, the staff still came daily, but Clinton insisted Mabel handle all his personal needs. Bring him water, pick his suits, organize his schedule. She hadn't signed up for this. One evening, she finally collapsed onto her bed, sighing with relief that the weekend had arrived. She reached for her phone to scroll through social media, only to see a message pop up from Clinton. Come to my room, now. She rolled her eyes, groaning. What is it now? Dragging herself to his door, she knocked lightly and peeked in. He was on his phone, lying sideways across the bed. Without looking up, he gestured toward a pile of wrappers and a used coffee cup. Trash, take it out. Seriously? She muttered, barely keeping her frustration in check. You have 2 feet. He glanced at her, and with that familiar glare of his, silenced her protest. Muttering under her breath, she picked up the trash and turned to leave, only to pause when she heard him speak softly into his phone. Yeah, I just want to see her, even just once. Can you help me? Mabel's heart sank. She stepped closer, eavesdropping through the slightly ajar door. He was talking about Bianca. Of course! Back in her room, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. No matter what she did, she would never be Bianca. The next morning, Mabel was up early to make breakfast. Clinton had dismissed the kitchen staff for Sundays. Yet another new arrangement, forcing her to do everything. She fixed Ogie and Akara, poured fresh pap into a clay mug, and walked upstairs. His room was silent. She knocked. No answer. She opened the door gently and gasped. Clinton was lying in bed, soaked in sweat, his breathing shallow. She ran to him, touched his forehead. It was burning hot. Oh no! Clinton? She shook him gently. No response. Panicked, she rushed to get a basin, towels, and cool water. She changed his clothes, wiped his forehead, and placed a damp towel over him. He stirred only once, groaning slightly before falling back into unconsciousness. Mabel stayed by his side, watching the rise and fall of his chest, exhaustion pulling her down. Her head drooped onto his arm, and soon she was asleep beside him. When Clinton awoke later, the first thing he noticed was the cool cloth on his forehead. The second, something warm pressed against him. He turned and saw Mabel, fast asleep, her fingers still wrapped around the towel. His expression softened. But when he tried to sit up, dizziness overwhelmed him, and he stumbled to the bathroom, only to collapse on the floor with a loud thud. Mabel jolted awake. Clinton, she cried, racing to find him sprawled by the door. With surprising strength, she helped him back to bed. He muttered something about being fine, but she hushed him with quiet confidence. Later, as she prepared light pepper soup downstairs, she smiled faintly to herself. She finally felt like more than just an assistant. Like maybe she was becoming his wife. Mabel hummed quietly to herself in the kitchen, ladling pepper soup into a shallow white bowl. The aromatic steam rose in elegant spirals, filling the Khalifa mansion with the smell of warm ginger, spice, and fresh tilapia. She wiped her hands on her apron, her cheeks flushed, not from the heat but from the strange, contented feeling stirring inside her. Despite everything, she felt connected to him. Just a little. She heard footsteps behind her. For a moment, she imagined Clinton walking in, groggy and shirtless, pulling her into his arms the way she had seen in Hollywood dramas. A little fantasy never hurt. You're awake, she said with a soft smile, turning, only to freeze. It wasn't Clinton. It was Bianca Onwudiwi. Mabel's body stiffened as the tall, caramel-skinned woman stepped into the kitchen, dressed in sleek black trousers and a silk blouse, looking as elegant and untouched by chaos as ever. Her makeup was flawless. Her perfume drifted through the room like a soft warning. Hey there, Mabel, Bianca said calmly, a faint smile on her lips. Mabel blinked. Hello. I figured I should come. Clinton's been calling, Bianca explained, leaning against the marble countertop like she still belonged there. I didn't realize he was unwell. There was a pause, then Bianca added, He's upstairs, right? Mabel nodded slowly. Mind if I wait for him down here? Bianca asked. Mabel's throat felt dry. No, not at all. They sat awkwardly on the cream-colored sofa in the main sitting room, silent at first. The clink of Mabel's spoon against her glass of water filled the space. Then Bianca turned to her with a strange gentleness. I owe you a thank you. Mabel's eyebrows shot up. Sorry? For what you did on the wedding day, Bianca said quietly. You saved Clinton's name, his pride. Mabel couldn't respond. What was there to say? I never meant to hurt him, Bianca continued. I just panicked. Clinton proposed so suddenly, and at the time I was already involved with someone else. Mabel blinked. You mean his friend, Dylan, Bianca confessed. We were seeing each other in secret, and when Clinton proposed, I didn't know how to say no. But on the wedding day, I realized I couldn't do it. Mabel looked away, unsure what to feel. This woman had left Clinton at the altar, yet here she was, beautiful, composed, and speaking with remorse that felt real. You and Clinton actually make sense, Bianca said softly. You work together. You understand his moods, his pace, and you're always around. It may have started as a mistake, but who knows? Mabel chuckled bitterly. If only you knew how he treats me at home. Bianca gave her a curious glance, but before Mabel could elaborate, a familiar voice echoed from the staircase. I see, Clinton said coldly, descending the stairs slowly. Mabel and Bianca both shot to their feet. So that's why you left, Clinton added. His eyes locked on Bianca. Clinton, I'm sorry, Save it. He cut her off. If you came here for a second chance, forget it. Bianca took a tentative step forward. Can we just talk? In private? He didn't say anything, just turned his back and gestured for her to follow. Mabel remained rooted in place, her heart thudding. She waited downstairs, pacing in circles, biting her thumbnail. She tiptoed near the door to eavesdrop, but quickly retreated when Clinton's voice warned her from behind the closed wood. Over an hour passed. Bianca emerged first. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes looked tired. She nodded once at Mabel before letting herself out quietly. Clinton remained upstairs for the rest of the evening. When Mabel brought dinner to his room, he didn't even open the door. Don't bother me, he said from behind it. And so she sat alone in the dining room, staring at the untouched plates, wondering what they had discussed and why it left her feeling so hollow. The days that followed were tense. At the office, Clinton became withdrawn again. He barely said more than a few words to Mabel, his expressions blank, movements robotic. She carried on with her duties, but the chill in the air between them was hard to ignore. One afternoon, Mabel stepped out of the Khalifa Corp headquarters to grab lunch from a nearby cafe. The sun was sharp and the breeze light. She hadn't eaten all day. As she waited by the vending machine for a cold bottle of water, she heard a voice. Mabel? She turned to see Logan, a former co-worker from her early days at Khalifa Corp. Logan, she smiled. Wow, it's been a while. They hugged briefly, then chatted as they walked toward the cafe. Logan was still the funny, carefree guy she remembered, cracking jokes that had her laughing despite herself. I always knew you'd move up, he teased, though I didn't expect you to marry the boss. Mabel flushed. It's not what it looks like. He tilted his head. Mabel, I know you. You're kind and hardworking. Whatever happened, I'm sure you had your reasons. She looked at him gratefully. Thank you. Unfortunately, just as she said those words, Clinton walked by. His gaze landed on them, sharp and dark. His lips tightened. Mabel instantly stepped back from Logan. I have to go, she said quickly. See you around? Logan waved goodbye. As she hurried after Clinton, her heart raced. Was he jealous? Mr. Clinton, she called softly. He stopped abruptly and turned. Yes? There's nothing going on between me and Logan, she blurted out. Clinton's eyebrow arched. Why would I care? The dismissal stung more than she expected. She bit her lip and looked away. Later that evening, instead of returning home directly, Clinton turned to her in the car. Have dinner with me. She blinked. What? Dinner? With your husband? Is that such a strange concept? Okay, she replied, too stunned to argue. They arrived at an intimate restaurant overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. Candlelight flickered between them. The tension eased slightly as wine flowed, and the city lights sparkled in the distance. But the calm didn't last. Clinton drank more than usual. His controlled exterior began to slip. and his voice trembled slightly. "She's getting married," he said, eyes glazed. "Bianca, to Dylan." Mabel didn't respond. What could she say? He looked up at her. "Why does it still hurt?" She reached across the table but stopped herself halfway. He looked away. "I'm sorry. You didn't sign up for any of this." By the time they got home, Clinton was tipsy, head resting against the car window. Mabel helped him inside, guiding him up the stairs. That night, they somehow ended up asleep in the same bed. She woke up the next morning nestled against his chest, his arm curled tightly around her. Her heart skipped. But then his voice, quiet, casual, broke the magic. "Aren't you going to make breakfast?" She froze. Was that all it meant to him? By the time the sun reached its peak that Monday, Mabel was exhausted. Her weekend had been spent caring for a sick husband who barely acknowledged her presence now that he was feeling better. Clinton Khalifa was back to his usual, formal, dismissive self. Sharp suits, sharp words, and sharper silences. She wanted to believe something had shifted during the night they'd shared a bed, that maybe his arm wrapped around her had meant something. But the moment he asked about breakfast, any fragile dreams she'd nurtured burst. Still, she cooked. She cooked because if she didn't, she'd think. And if she thought too much, her heart would crack open. That afternoon at the office, Clinton had back-to-back meetings, and Mabel barely saw him. She focused on compiling quarterly reports, avoiding everyone's stares. Rumors had spread through the office like wildfire after they'd shown up married. Some were curious, some skeptical. Most assumed she had seduced her way up the ladder. She wished someone knew the truth. Around 4 p.m., she walked to the vending machine near the lobby to grab a soda, rubbing her temples. That was when she overheard it. "She deserves better," a voice said gently. Mabel froze. It was Logan again. She hadn't even noticed him approaching. "I don't like seeing you like this," he continued. "The Mabel I know used to smile." She smiled weakly. "It's complicated, Logan." He stepped closer. "Whatever it is, I'm here. You're not alone." Just then, Clinton turned the corner and saw them. He didn't say a word. His face gave away nothing. But when their eyes met, Mabel saw the brief flicker of something. Guilt, jealousy, pain. She didn't know. But he walked away. That evening, Mabel returned home early to find Clinton already in the kitchen, wearing a dark gray polo and beige slacks, sleeves pushed up, apron tied loosely. He was chopping peppers with surprising precision. She paused, stunned. "You're cooking?" He looked up. "Just trying something new." A tense silence settled between them. "I saw you with Logan earlier," he added casually. She turned away, pretending to rinse tomatoes. "He's just a friend." "I didn't ask." "But you thought it." He didn't deny it. Instead, he picked up a pot and placed it on the stove. "Do you like pepper soup or tomato stew?" "Pepper soup," she said softly. He nodded and reached for the spices. Moments later, Clinton handed her a spoon. "Taste this." Their hands brushed, her chest fluttered. She blew on the spoonful, tasted it, then looked up with wide eyes. "It's good." A small smile played on his lips. He took the same spoon and tasted it himself. "Not bad." Mabel turned away, trying to hide the blush that spread across her cheeks. Did we just share an indirect kiss? Later, they sat side by side at the dining table, bowls steaming between them. It wasn't a romantic date. There were no candles or violin music. But it was something, a beginning. Still, Mabel remained quiet. "Are you mad at me?" Clinton finally asked. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Then why won't you talk?" She sighed. "Because I'm confused. I don't know who I am to you." Clinton was quiet for a long time. Then he stood, walked toward her, and gently trapped her between his arms, one hand on each side of the chair. "Why are you like this?" he asked, his voice a whisper. She looked up, startled. "Like what?" "Like, you're scared of me." "I'm not scared," she said defensively. "Then stop acting like you're invisible." Tears pricked her eyes. Because that's how you treat me. Like I don't matter. He pulled back, as if her words had punched him in the chest. I'm trying, Mabel. I swear I am. He ran a hand through his hair. I've never done this before. What? Marriage? No. Caring. That silenced her. Then he added quietly, I don't want to take you for granted. Not like I did with Bianca. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Mabel's heart clenched. Do you still love her? He paused, then looked at her directly. I don't know. I think I'm learning what real love looks like, and it doesn't feel like what we had. A long silence passed between them. Then, without warning, he lowered his head and rested it gently on her shoulder. Please don't leave me, he whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just wrapped her arms around him and held on. The following days brought a subtle shift. Clinton was still serious at work, but kinder. He didn't bark orders. He actually said thank you. And sometimes he even smiled, genuinely. One morning he took her hand while walking into a meeting. She blinked in surprise but didn't pull away. Their coworkers noticed. Whispers followed them like perfume, but for once, Mabel didn't care. The next weekend, Clinton handed her an envelope while they had breakfast on the terrace. The golden light of the morning sun bathed the mansion in a warm glow. What's this? She asked. A trip. She opened the envelope and gasped. Aspen? I have a meeting there, and I want you to come with me. She stared at him. Me? Why? He reached for her hand. Because you're my wife, and I want us to start acting like it. Mabel's heart flipped. Okay, she whispered. That night, after packing her suitcase, she headed to her room only to find Clinton waiting by the door. His face unreadable. What are you doing here? She asked. I was thinking. He took a step closer, voice low. Married couples don't sleep in separate rooms. Her pulse quickened. You want me to stay in your room? He nodded slowly. And if I say no, I'll respect that. She looked into his eyes for a long time, then nodded. I'll stay. The Khalifa private jet cut through the clouds like a silver blade. Mabel Iduson stared out the window at the endless blue sky, the hum of the engines oddly calming. She wore a soft brown two-piece set with a matching shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her hair braided neatly into a low bun. Across from her, Clinton Khalifa sipped coffee from a white porcelain mug, eyes flicking occasionally toward her, but saying little. He looked devastatingly handsome in his travel wear, black turtleneck, cream slacks, and a tailored wool coat draped casually over the seat behind him. His demeanor, for once, was calm. This wasn't the same Clinton who had barked orders in the office, nor the man who'd glared at her like she was a burden in the mansion. He was softer now, almost boyish in moments of silence. I still can't believe you planned this, Mabel said finally, breaking the quiet. Clinton glanced up. It's just a business meeting. Mabel gave him a side glance. Right, and I'm just your secretary. He smirked and leaned back in his seat. You're much more than that, Mabel. Those words lingered between them. More than that. When they arrived at the resort in Aspen, the Nigerian version, tucked into a mountain luxury estate on the outskirts of Abuja, the air was crisp and scented with pine. The property was gorgeous, sweeping green hills, stone cottages with heated floors, and balconies that overlooked the lake. They were led to a large two-bedroom villa, but only one room had been prepared. I thought we'd share, Clinton said with a shrug, catching her stare. Mabel laughed nervously. Of course you did. She walked into the room first and was struck by its sheer beauty. A white four-poster bed dominated the space with sheer drapes falling like mist. Floor-to-ceiling windows let the moonlight spill in, and soft jazz played in the background. Clinton, she said, turning toward him, this place is magical. He stepped in behind her, unbuttoning his coat slowly. I'm glad you like it. Her eyes lingered on the bed. Her heartbeat quickened. They'd shared space before, at home in passing. But this was a different kind of closeness. I'll go freshen up, she mumbled, and dashed into the bathroom. The warm water calmed her. She wrapped herself in a towel and stared at her reflection. This wasn't a fantasy anymore. She was living in it, married, traveling, and sharing a room with a man she wasn't even sure loved her. When she stepped out, she wore a green silk slip dress, modest yet soft against her skin. Clinton stood by the window shirtless, wearing only black lounge pants. He looked over his shoulder as she entered. For a second, neither of them spoke. "Are you nervous?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "A little." He turned toward her. "Don't be. I didn't bring you here to trap you." She smiled slightly. "That's reassuring." He stepped closer, his tone playful now. "But if I said I wanted to cuddle," Mabel froze. "Would that scare you?" "Yes," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Good," he said, gently pulling her toward the bed. "Let's be scared together." They lay beside each other, backs touching, the silence more comforting than awkward. Clinton didn't push. He didn't even try to hold her hand. But just before they drifted off, he whispered, "I like the way you laugh." Mabel smiled in the dark. "I like the way you pretend not to care when you do." He chuckled softly. That night they didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, gilding the room in gold. Mabel blinked awake to find Clinton already up in the kitchenette, making toast and coffee. He was humming. She stared at him from the bed, dazed. "Morning," he said casually. "Good morning," she murmured. He walked over and kissed her forehead. Her heart stuttered. "I thought I'd let you sleep. I have the meeting in an hour." She nodded, still processing the kiss. "And after?" "We have the rest of the day to ourselves." After his meeting, they explored the estate. Clinton held her hand openly, introducing her as his wife to clients and vendors. Mabel felt a strange pride, even if their marriage had started as a lie. It didn't feel fake anymore. Not when he looked at her like that. Not when he whispered things only she could hear. In the afternoon, they had lunch at a private cabin overlooking the lake. Mabel laughed at Clinton's attempt to be romantic, feeding her fried plantain with too much pepper. "You're trying," she teased, wiping her tongue. "I really am," he said seriously. Mabel smiled. Later that evening, Clinton led her to the large indoor garden within the resort. Twinkling lights hung from above, cascading like stars. A small band stood nearby, instruments in hand. "What's this?" she asked, looking around. He pulled her forward. "Wait and see." Suddenly, the band began to play. Clinton stepped forward, mic in hand. His voice, though untrained, was steady as he sang one of her favorite old-school Nigerian love songs. Mabel gasped, pressing her hands over her mouth. He wasn't a singer, but he was trying. He was doing it for her. As the final note played, Clinton knelt down and pulled a ring from his pocket. "Mabel Iduson, I know we're already married, but I want to propose to you the right way." Tears welled in her eyes. "Will you marry me again?" he asked, smiling up at her. She nodded, unable to speak. He slipped the ring onto her finger as the crowd, mostly staff and some invited guests, applauded. Clinton stood and kissed her in the soft garden light, his hand cupping her cheek with care. That night they made love for the first time. And this time it wasn't confusion. It wasn't pretending. It was love, real and unspoken. The morning after their quiet and passionate union in Aspen, Mabel Iduson woke slowly, cocooned in warmth, in something deeper, something that felt like belonging. The air in the room was still. The sun poured through the large windows, wrapping the ivory sheets in golden light. Clinton Khalifa lay beside her, one arm wrapped around her waist, his cheek resting lightly against her shoulder. His breathing was slow and peaceful, his brows relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. He looked nothing like the guarded, commanding boss she had known for years. Mabel exhaled softly and smiled. They had finally crossed the line between duty and desire, confusion and clarity. What happened the night before wasn't impulsive. It was intimate, deliberate, and overwhelming in all the best ways. She closed her eyes again, savoring the rare moment of peace. But then, as if reading her thoughts, Clinton stirred. "Morning," he whispered, voice gravelly from sleep. Mabel turned slightly to face him. "Morning." He reached up and tucked a curl behind her ear, eyes half-lidded but focused entirely on her. "You look beautiful." She blushed, pulling the blanket up slightly. "You're being sweet. That's new." Clinton grinned and leaned in to kiss her forehead. "Get used to it." They spent the morning together, eating fresh fruit on the balcony, laughing about nothing in particular, and walking barefoot across the lawn of the villa. Clinton even took her hand and danced with her under the trees. No music needed. By afternoon, their car was packed and ready to take them back to the city. Clinton watched Mabel as she gazed out the window, fingers playing with her new ring. His proposal had been spontaneous, but it had felt right. The moment they arrived back in Lagos, though, reality began to creep back in. The mansion in Ikoyi felt colder. The staff welcomed them politely but distantly. Mabel could feel the tension creeping into Clinton's shoulders the moment they stepped inside. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Mabel caught him standing by the bedroom window, staring out at the city lights. "Something wrong?" she asked. Clinton hesitated, then sighed. "No, just thinking." She walked over, gently wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "About Bianca?" He turned to face her. "Not exactly. More like, about us, how fast everything is happening." She nodded. "It feels fast, yes, but it also feels right." He cupped her face in both hands. "You deserve a man who doesn't need to learn how to love you. You deserve someone who already knows how." "Then learn," she whispered. "Learn with me." The next few days at the office were strangely quiet. People noticed their shift. Clinton still held Mabel's hand in the hallway sometimes. He brought her lunch, even joined her in the staff lounge during breaks. It wasn't like before. There was warmth now, curiosity, and unspoken tenderness between them. But not everyone was happy about it. Melissa, the investor's daughter who had mocked Mabel at the wedding, was back in town, and this time she was more determined than ever to cause trouble. One afternoon, while Mabel was reviewing budgets in the office boardroom, Melissa sauntered in without knocking. "Well, look who's sitting at the table now," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. Mabel didn't flinch. "Can I help you?" Melissa smirked and sat opposite her. "You know this won't last, right? Men like Clinton Khalifa don't fall in love with women like you. Secretaries don't get happy endings." Mabel's eyes narrowed, but she kept her voice calm. "Funny, that's exactly what Clinton's father said, and yet here I am." Before Melissa could reply, Clinton himself entered. "Mabel," he said, crossing the room to stand behind her. He placed a firm, possessive hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go for lunch?" Melissa's face paled. Mabel stood slowly. "Yes, I am." As they walked out together, Clinton leaned close. "You handled her like a queen." "I'm your wife," Mabel said simply. "I have to carry myself like one." Later that evening, as they lay in bed under the dim bedroom lights, Clinton turned to her, eyes softer than usual. "Today you made me proud." Mabel blinked. "I did?" He nodded. "You didn't let her break you. You stood tall. That's something Bianca never did." Mabel turned her face away. "Let's not talk about her." "I only meant," he trailed off. "I see the difference now. You don't run when things get hard." "I don't," she said softly. "But sometimes I wish I could." He reached for her hand. Don't run. I want you here. I want us." Her heart swelled. "Then stop pushing me away when you're scared." Clinton took a moment before answering. Then he said the words she'd been waiting to hear. "I'm scared of how much I need you." Mabel swallowed hard, tears stinging her eyes. "Then let that be enough for now," she whispered. That weekend, Clinton did something even she hadn't expected. He invited both their families to dinner. Mabel's mother, elegant in her wine-colored lace, sat quietly beside Clinton's parents as the chef served grilled tilapia, ate foriro and coconut rice. Laughter and warm conversation flowed around the table. Clinton kept his arm on the back of Mabel's chair, pride in his eyes as he introduced her to everyone as my wife. After dinner, Clinton pulled her aside to the garden. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. Mabel smiled. "I never planned to." He drew her close and kissed her under the stars, slow, deep, and full of meaning. And for the first time, Mabel felt something shift permanently. This wasn't just a contract marriage or a cover-up. It was love, real, blooming slowly, but fully hers. A month had passed since the Aspen trip, and something undeniable had taken root between Mabel Iduson and Clinton Khalifa. Their marriage, once stitched together by circumstance, had become something far more tender, more real. The public still whispered, but Mabel no longer cared. Clinton's actions spoke louder than any rumor. At the office, he now made a point of walking beside her instead of ahead. He waited for her in elevators, and during meetings, he often turned to ask her opinion, not as a favor, but as a habit. It hadn't gone unnoticed. "She has him wrapped around her finger," someone whispered near the copy room one day. Mabel walked past like she didn't hear it, but inside, she felt the flicker of pride. That evening, Clinton invited her to a formal gala at the Lagos International Finance Center. It was the annual benefit for children's education, a gathering of elite families, politicians, and media. Mabel had never felt more nervous in her life. "What should I wear?" she asked Clinton in their bedroom, holding up 3 different evening gowns. He stood at the doorframe, arms crossed, tie undone around his neck. "Wear the green one. It brings out your eyes." "You've never looked at my eyes before," she teased softly. "I do now," he replied, walking in to help zip her dress. His fingers brushed the skin of her back, warm and careful. When she turned to face him, he stepped back slowly, his gaze lingering. "You're beautiful, Mabel." She smiled, cheeks flushed. "Let's go before I melt." The gala was dazzling. Chandeliers glittered above polished marble floors, and champagne flowed like water. The media swarmed the red carpet, calling out Clinton's name. But when Mabel stepped out beside him, dressed in emerald satin and gold heels, a hush fell over the crowd. She wasn't just the girl who had replaced the runaway bride. She was a force in her own right. Clinton placed a gentle hand on her waist as cameras flashed. "Ignore them. Just look at me." And so she did. They walked inside as husband and wife. No more pretending. Inside, Clinton introduced her proudly. "To the CEO of Khalifa Holdings and his elegant wife," someone toasted. Mabel tried to hide her nervousness, but Clinton stayed close, whispering reassurance. At dinner, he even fed her a spoonful of dessert, smirking when she turned pink under the amused eyes of their table mates. Later that night, after dancing and more pictures than she could count, Mabel found herself alone on the rooftop terrace, looking out over the city lights. She needed air, needed a moment to remember who she was before all this. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn. "I thought I might find you here," Clinton said, wrapping his blazer gently over her shoulders. "I needed a break," she whispered. He leaned on the railing beside her. "I've been thinking." "About?" He hesitated. "About what happens next. About how this thing between us isn't pretend anymore." Mabel's throat tightened. "I know. I don't want to go back to how things were," he said. "I don't want to sleep alone. I don't want to act like we're strangers." She turned to him, lips parted, breath caught in her throat. "I love you, Mabel," he said. Her heart stopped. "I know it's late, and maybe I should have said it sooner. But that night in Aspen, that wasn't just about attraction. That was the night I realized I'd found home in you." Tears sprang to her eyes. She didn't rush to answer. Instead, she reached for his hand, interlacing their fingers, letting silence speak for her. Eventually, she whispered, "You took long enough." He chuckled, kissed her knuckles. "So, you love me too?" She smiled. "I never stopped." The following day, the headlines exploded. Clinton Khalifa and mystery wife steal spotlight at Lagos Gala. Is this love or just a business arrangement? Meet Mabel Iduson, the woman who won the Ice King's heart. Mabel groaned when she saw the covers, but Clinton only smirked. They'll get tired soon. Just let them talk. She shook her head. I'm not worried about them. Then what are you worried about? That you'll wake up one day and regret this. He reached for her, pulling her gently into his lap. The only thing I regret is not seeing you sooner. That weekend, Clinton surprised her with a visit to her mother in Surulere. The woman hadn't been expecting them, and when she opened the door and saw Clinton in jeans and a simple polo, holding a bag of groceries, she nearly dropped her glass of malt. You brought Clinton Khalifa to my kitchen, her mother gasped. Mabel laughed. Yes, Mama. Clinton took over the chopping board while Mabel helped prepare stew. It felt surreal, this powerful man sweating in a hot Lagos kitchen, helping her mother peel ugu leaves and taste yam porridge. Later, as they sat on the balcony sipping zobo, her mother said softly, He's changing. I can see it in his eyes. Mabel smiled. He's trying. Her mother nodded. Then hold on to him. Not many men with that kind of wealth know how to humble themselves. I won't let go, Mama, Mabel whispered. I know. That night, back in Ikoyi, Clinton pulled Mabel into his arms under the sheets. No tension, no hesitation. I've been thinking, he said against her hair. That sounds dangerous, he chuckled. About the wedding, the real one. She froze. We already had one, remember? Kind of forced, with a runaway bride and an overwhelmed secretary. I want to do it again, properly. A second wedding. For us. For real. Mabel pulled back to look at him. Are you serious? Dead serious. Where? He grinned. Wherever you want, as long as you're the one walking down that aisle. She couldn't speak. She could only nod. And as he kissed her softly, Mabel realized something powerful. This wasn't the man she had married. This was the man she had loved into existence. Planning a second wedding was never something Mabel Iduson dreamed of doing. But this wasn't just a do-over. It was the beginning of something whole and true. This time, she wasn't standing in for anyone. She wasn't filling a role. She wasn't pretending. She was the woman Clinton Khalifa chose. The preparations started immediately. Clinton insisted on handling most of it himself. No stress, he said one evening, lounging beside her on the couch. You've already been through enough for 2 weddings. Mabel glanced at him with amusement. I still can't believe you're the one asking about flower arrangements and cake tastings. He smirked. You married a man of many talents. Their laughter echoed through the mansion. For the first time since their chaotic union, the house felt like a home. The new wedding was set for a private beach in Ilashi. Only close friends, family, and trusted business associates were invited. No photographers, no public announcements. I want this to be just ours, Clinton said. A week before the ceremony, Mabel received a custom emerald green wedding dress designed by one of Lagos's top fashion houses. It shimmered with understated elegance, just like her. I don't want white, she told the designer. I want something bold, something that says this wasn't my first wedding, but it's the one that mattered. The morning of the wedding, the air smelled of sea salt and fresh hibiscus. Guests sat on white chairs arranged on the sand. Soft jazz played under the canopy of palm trees. The ocean shimmered like a mirror behind the altar. Clinton stood waiting, dressed in a bespoke ivory caftan embroidered with gold thread. He looked powerful, peaceful, and for once, nervous. His mother, seated in the front row, leaned over to his father. He's never looked at anyone the way he looks at her. Then the music changed. Everyone stood. And down the sandy aisle walked Mabel. She was radiant, her green dress flowing like waves, her braids adorned with tiny gold cuffs. She carried no bouquet. She didn't need one. Her eyes were fixed only on him. Clinton's heart swelled as she approached. This wasn't like the first time. There was no confusion, no pretense. Only truth. Only love. When she reached him, he took her hands in his voice tight with emotion. You came. Mabel smiled through tears. This time, it's my turn to choose you. The officiant kept it simple. There were no long speeches, no elaborate rituals, just vows. I, Clinton Khalifa, he began, promise to see you, not just with my eyes but with my soul. I promise to love you not for how perfectly you entered my life, but for how beautifully you changed it. Mabel's voice trembled as she answered. I, Mabel Iduson, never thought love would find me this way, but now that it has, I promise to fight for it. For you, for us, every day. A soft wind danced through the canopy. The guests wiped tears and smiled. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said, and this time Clinton didn't hesitate. He kissed her with all the passion, reverence, and joy he had been too afraid to show before. As the sun dipped into the ocean, guests clapped and cheered. The reception was held under a grand white tent adorned with fairy lights. Mabel and Clinton danced barefoot on the sand, swaying to a slow Afrobeats love song. I feel like I'm dreaming, she whispered against his chest. If you are, he said, then I'll stay here with you. The next morning they woke tangled in each other's arms, still in their wedding clothes on a four-poster bed by the beach. Clinton kissed her shoulder. You're stuck with me now. Mabel smiled, turning to him. I was stuck with you the day I walked down that aisle in a stranger's dress. Now I'm here by choice. He looked into her eyes. And I'll never forget that. They made love slowly, with no fear this time, only honesty, only home. 3 months later, they stood in front of the construction site for the new Iduson Khalifa Foundation, a school and women's center in Surulere. For every girl who thinks she's not enough, Mabel said during the groundbreaking, and every woman who chose herself even when the world didn't, this is for you. Clinton stood beside her, holding her hand as cameras flashed, not because he needed to be seen, but because he wanted to stand beside her when she shined. That night, Mabel curled into his side in bed, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. Clinton. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you, Bianca. He chuckled. You're thanking my ex? If she hadn't run, Mabel whispered, I'd have never found you. He kissed her forehead, pulling her closer. And I would have spent my life with the wrong woman. Silence followed. Then with a smile pressed against his shoulder, Mabel whispered, I'm glad I wore that dress. It was nearly midnight in Ikoyi, and the Khalifa mansion was unusually quiet. The moonlight filtered in through the large glass walls, illuminating the elegant minimalism that Clinton had always preferred. But tonight, it didn't feel cold. It felt like home. Mabel stood barefoot in the kitchen, wearing Clinton's oversized shirt, sipping from a mug of warm cinnamon milk. Her bump was just beginning to show, barely a swell beneath the cotton, but enough to make her smile as she rested her hand gently over it. She heard footsteps. He was awake. Clinton appeared in the doorway, shirtless in gray sweatpants, his hair tousled from sleep. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her in the glow of the undercabinet lights. You should be in bed, he said softly. You too, she replied, sipping again. He walked over and stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and placing both palms over her belly. His chin rested on her shoulder. I still can't believe you're carrying my child, he murmured. It feels unreal. Mabel smiled. Real enough when the nausea hits. He chuckled and kissed her cheek. I've read 5 parenting books already. I don't want to mess this up. You won't, she said. You're not the same man you were a few months ago. He turned her gently to face him, brushing her curls back with both hands. Do you know, he whispered, there were nights I used to lie awake in this house, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was even meant for me. She touched his chest lightly. And now? Now I stare at you and wonder how I ever lived without it. In the weeks following their second wedding, Clinton and Mabel's life settled into something soft and steady. Their marriage wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements, stressful meetings, and moments of silence. But there was now laughter in the hallways, music on the weekends, and whispered conversations that went long past midnight. At the office, Clinton surprised everyone again by stepping back from some of his executive duties. He began working more closely with the foundation and the education initiative he and Mabel had launched together. "You're really going soft," joked Lance, his longtime friend, during a boardroom meeting. Clinton smirked. "Or maybe I finally learned what matters." Mabel had become something more than a wife to him. She was his partner, in vision, in purpose, in heart. One day, as they sat together in the garden reading contracts and sipping fresh mango juice, Mabel leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked. Clinton glanced at her, surprised. "Bianca?" Mabel nodded. He paused. "Sometimes. Not in the way I used to. Not with anger. Just as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" He took a moment, then said, "Of how wrong I was about what love looks like." She didn't press further. She didn't need to. His hand tightened around hers. When the baby's first kick came, Clinton was the one who felt it. He was reading aloud from a parenting book in bed, Mabel curled against him, half asleep. He paused mid-sentence when he felt the sudden movement beneath his palm. He went still, then grinned like a boy. "You felt that?" she mumbled. He nodded, eyes wide. Yeah, I did." He kissed her bump reverently, whispering words Mabel couldn't quite hear. That night she lay awake longer than usual, watching him sleep. She had once been his secretary, timid, quiet, unnoticed. Now she was his wife, his best friend, the mother of his child. 6 months later, the baby arrived on a rainy afternoon, born into a world of soft thunder and joy. A boy. Perfect. Healthy. They named him Zion Khalifa. As Mabel cradled him in her arms, Clinton stood beside her, eyes glassy, unable to speak. He reached down, kissed Zion's tiny forehead, then pressed his lips to Mabel's hand. "You gave me everything," he whispered. "You gave me the chance," she replied. Back at home, Mabel watched as Clinton carried their newborn through the garden, pointing out flowers, telling stories that baby wouldn't understand for years. She stood at the doorway, arms folded, smiling with tears in her eyes. She had no idea that a desperate moment at a wedding, wearing another woman's dress, would lead her here. But it had. Because sometimes fate isn't about perfection. It's about showing up when love has no backup plan. A full year had passed since Mabel Iduson walked down the aisle in a stranger's dress to save Clinton Khalifa from humiliation. Now that story had become family folklore. They often laughed about it, how she'd been terrified, how he'd been furious, and how the entire situation had been, in Clinton's own words, a divine ambush. But if anyone asked Clinton today what the best decision of his life was, he wouldn't hesitate. "It was the moment I took her hand at that altar," he'd say, even when I didn't understand why. The Khalifa mansion had changed over the past year. The once sterile luxury had softened. Baby toys now littered the sunroom. Family photos filled the once bare walls. And every Saturday morning, the scent of akara and cinnamon tea filled the kitchen as Mabel danced barefoot with Zion strapped to her chest. Clinton, still sharp in the boardroom, had become the gentlest version of himself at home. He read bedtime stories. He helped with diaper changes. And once a week, without fail, he brought Mabel a bouquet of white orchids, just because. "I don't need flowers to know you love me," she said once, smiling. "I need them to remind myself how lucky I am," he replied. Their love wasn't loud or extravagant. It was quiet, certain, steady. On their first anniversary, Clinton rented out the same garden where he had once proposed for a second time. But this time, it wasn't to redo anything. It was to renew their vows privately, with only Zion giggling in his stroller nearby. "I still choose you," Clinton whispered. "I never stopped," Mabel answered, tears brimming in her eyes. The media eventually let go of their obsession with the scandal of the missing bride. What followed instead were headlines that celebrated their foundation, which had now expanded to 6 learning centers and a maternal health initiative for young women across Lagos. At one such center in Yaba, Mabel gave a speech that moved even hardened politicians to tears. "I stood in for someone once," she told the crowd, "and somehow I became the one he was waiting for." That's what second chances are. Sometimes they don't look like blessings at first, but if you stay long enough, you'll see they were always meant to be. One evening, as Clinton tucked Zion into bed, the little boy looked up with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, how did you meet Mummy?" Clinton laughed. "That's a long story, champ." Zion yawned, tugging his blanket up to his chin. "Tell me." So Clinton sat beside him, began from the beginning. How Mummy saved Daddy from embarrassment, how love surprised them both, and how the woman he didn't expect turned out to be the one he'd always needed. By the time the story ended, Zion was fast asleep. Clinton stood quietly watching his son, his heart full. Then he walked downstairs and found Mabel on the patio, curled up in a blanket, staring up at the moon. "Did he sleep?" she asked. He sat beside her. "After hearing our story, yes." They were silent for a moment. Then Mabel whispered, "Do you ever wish it had happened differently? That Bianca showed up, and I never wore the dress?" Clinton shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "because then I would have missed the best chapter of my life." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. And in that moment, with the city lights glittering in the distance, their baby sleeping peacefully upstairs, and the quiet rhythm of their hearts beating in sync, Mabel and Clinton knew this wasn't just a happy ending. This was a beautiful beginning. 3 years later, the Khalifa estate in Ikoyi had blossomed into more than just a home. It had become a sanctuary of love, laughter, and legacy. The once silent marble hallways now echoed with the joyous noise of little feet and the unfiltered giggles of two children raised in the warmth of real affection. Mabel Iduson Khalifa stood before the wide vanity in her walk-in closet, dressed in a flowing cream robe, her hair pinned up in soft curls. In her hands, she held a delicate, custom-sewn, emerald green tulle dress, no bigger than a pillowcase. Its bodice was lined with gold beads, and the skirt flared like a little cloud. Today was her daughter's first birthday. She smiled as she gently pressed the dress against her chest, remembering the first green dress she ever wore, the one that changed everything, the one that didn't belong to her. Now she was designing dresses for her daughter, ones that belonged only to her. Behind her, Clinton stepped into the room wearing a charcoal gray shirt rolled at the sleeves, barefoot, holding a tiny gold bracelet in his hand. "She's going to cry the moment you put that on her," he teased, pressing a kiss to Mabel's neck. "She'll wear it for pictures," Mabel replied with mock seriousness, turning toward him. "After that, she can rip it off and crawl across the cake for all I care." Clinton chuckled. "Sounds like Zion's influence. I saw him painting the dog's tail with yogurt this morning." Mabel laughed, placing the baby dress carefully in its velvet box. "Our kids are wild." "They're perfect," he replied. The backyard was transformed into a fairy tale scene. Balloons floated like clouds across the manicured lawn. Soft jazz played under the shaded canopy, and long white tables were lined with gold-rimmed plates and many jolo-filled suya cones for guests. Their friends had gathered. Family flew in from Ghana, South Africa, and even London. But at the center of it all was Mabel, radiant, her baby girl perched on her hip in that same emerald dress. Zion, now a spirited 3-year-old with Clinton's intense eyes and Mabel's smile, ran barefoot across the garden with paint on his fingers and cupcake frosting on his chin. As guests sang happy birthday, Clinton knelt beside his daughter, holding her tiny fingers, while Mabel helped her blow out the single candle on her white and gold cake. Cheers erupted. Confetti fluttered. But to Mabel, everything disappeared, except for the way Clinton looked at their daughter, as if he were witnessing his second miracle. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the kids were finally asleep, Mabel stood at the window of the master bedroom, gazing out at the Lagos skyline wrapped in night. She didn't hear Clinton approach until his arms wrapped slowly around her waist from behind. "You're quiet," he murmured against her shoulder. "Just reflecting," she said. 3 years ago, I was standing in a mirror in a dress that wasn't mine, and now I'm here, with a daughter of my own, wearing a dress I made. Clinton's grip tightened slightly, his voice low and full of awe. You changed my life, Mabel. She turned in his arms, eyes misting. No, Clinton, we changed each other. They stood like that for a while, forehead to forehead, their breathing slow, steady, in sync. Then Clinton said something that took her breath away. I've been thinking, he said, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the full story. How her mother saved her father on the day everything went wrong. Mabel smiled, eyes shimmering with tears, and how love made everything right. The next morning, Mabel sat at her writing desk with a hot cup of Zobo tea, pen in hand. She was drafting something she'd been meaning to write for months. A letter to her daughter. My darling girl, one day when you're old enough, I'll tell you a story about courage, about heartbreak, and about a green dress. You see, your mummy once walked down an aisle she wasn't meant to. I was afraid. I was unworthy. I was pretending. But something beautiful happened. I found love not because I was perfect, but because I showed up. Because I gave my heart. One day you'll wear a dress of your own. Not one borrowed. Not one meant for someone else. Yours. Entirely yours. And when you do, I hope you remember, love doesn't always arrive in the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives wearing the wrong name, at the wrong time. But if your heart is open, it will find its way home. Love always, Mom. She closed the letter, kissed the envelope, and slid it into a keepsake box lined with baby photos in the miniature green dress. Outside, she heard Clinton's laughter mixing with Zion's squeals and the soft babble of their daughter in his arms. And with tears in her eyes and peace in her soul, Mabel whispered to herself, this was never a mistake. This was the best decision I never planned. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.